Welcome to another conversation in People in Fundraising. This podcast features interviews with nonprofit professionals who discuss their career journeys, lessons learned, and enthusiasm for working in fundraising. And here is your host, the founder of People in Fundraising, Tim Wilson.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another conversation, episode 113 in the People in Fundraising webcast podcast. Today is September 25th, 2024, and I'm very excited and looking forward to our conversation today with my guest, Aashika Patel. Hi, Aashika.
Hi, Tim. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. So excited to be doing this with you.
Yes, me too. I first got connected to you. We were at the Case 7 and 8 District Conference in Anaheim, and you led this outstanding workshop about campaign readiness, building and aligning the team, and such an important topic in the social impact nonprofit sector. And I was just impressed by how you presented, and then the clients, and how you had worked together with them to prepare that institution for a campaign. So I was like, that is that is like an evergreen topic, and I'm so glad that you said yes to coming on to be a guest and talk about yourself as well.
Absolutely. I think back to those moments of presentation where we meet you and people like you at conferences. We wouldn't be able to do the quality of presentation that we do if it weren't for our great clients. You know, so much of what you heard about at that case gathering, District 7, was the great work that the University of San Diego is doing in their campaign. And it's really just a joy to work with them and others like them in my role as managing director and partner at CCS Fundraising, where I've been for 13 years. And I am a fundraising strategist. I think about our work as fundraising solutions work. You know, we meet organizations that are encountering roadblocks between where they would like their philanthropic capacity to be and where they are right now. And sometimes they can identify those roadblocks, other times they can't, or they're having a little bit of challenge with that. And we really help to facilitate an understanding of what it's going to take to get to where they want to go, and really use our abilities to put the pieces together to facilitate that progress. And so it's very privileged work. I feel very fortunate to be able to do it, and certainly don't take the responsibility lightly. So you see some of that at places like Case District 7, and then some of it, folks never really hear about, but I'm so eager to share in places like this and platforms like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And 13 years at CCS, that's a great track record.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I sort of blinked and I was, a partner. No, I started in this role at the entry-level position, which is also how I got my start in fundraising. I was a coordinator when I first began this work. And I think there's great value in starting from the bottom. You're able to sort of see all of the pieces working together. You're able to see the landscape. When you're at the bottom, it's very difficult to have any sort of ego in this work. And so you kind of start out with a lot of humility. You make a lot of mistakes and you learn from them. You have the opportunity to have great bosses and not so great bosses. And you start to refine who it is that you want to be as you begin to emerge as a leader. So I'm very fortunate just for the career track at CCS, for the ability to move through that career track with visibility and predictability. And I like to think about it as really a cultural tenet of the firm, to bring in good people, raise them up throughout the work that we're doing, and really position them to be as helpful as they can be to our nonprofit landscape.
That's terrific. Yeah, thank you. I would love, Aashika, if we could start the Q&A piece. You mentioned that CCS was your entree into nonprofit work. So how did you get from where you were before to getting right in the door as a coordinator at CCS, please?
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to reflect on some of my earlier days in the world of philanthropy. My first interactions with the idea of charity, charitable giving, philanthropic community is from my own sort of American experience, if you will. I was born in Florida. My faith-based community, I'm a practicing Hindu, had built a Hindu temple in our local community. And we had been sort of practicing and gathering at people's homes, right, on every Sunday. And you'd kind of go into someone's house and we'd all squeeze in. And there would be tremendous hospitality. And when you're young, you don't really think of that as anything other than I'm visiting with my community.
Sure.
And then to see that go and evolve as you're evolving as a young person, into a physical manifestation of a place to worship and a place to be together in community, you really see the power of people, and the power of uniting around an idea of what the world can look like, if people contribute, if people think about the greater good and really organize around a plan to make something happen. And so I was about 16 when I kind of saw what's possible through fundraising. I didn't have these words at the time, like major
Sure.
gift fundraising and volunteer cultivation and stewardship. So there was something that kind of like piqued my curiosity back then. I think I went to college, without even a real understanding of how philanthropy was at work around me. It just
Sure.
was not something I was tuned into. And when I came out of school, I needed to find some work, and I was working in the programs part of the Children's Aid Society in New York City, and very quickly learned that program work is for incredibly special people. It takes a certain type of fortitude and focus to do nonprofit programmatic work that is like boots on the ground service to the people. I didn't quite have the stamina for it. It didn't feel like it was what I wanted to be doing. And every time I'd go and pick up my check, like back in the day, I was doing that
Yes.
at the headquarter office. There was a woman who was working in fundraising, and her office was right next to the payroll office. And she was lovely. She was a people person. She was a relationshipper. And she started to tell me a little bit about what she did. And kind of in the way of coincidence, around the same time, I got a flyer in the mail from NYU. That was a program in fundraising.
Oh.
And just an invitation to come to an informational and kind of check out what this program was. So I went, to kind of just a series of yeses, if you will. So I went, and I went to go check it out. And I said, this is something that's accessible to me, and something that I'm interested in. Why don't I go ahead and just kind of try this out? And on the first day of one of my classes, plan giving class, one of my professors, I sat in the front because I was the only seat available. And she kind of asked me, like, do you have a job? And I said, I'm working on the program side, but I'm not working in fundraising. And she said, I know somebody who's hiring. And so if you'd like to apply, I'm happy to put a word in that you're a part of this program, and I'm happy to help you, with accessing that opportunity. So I did. And I was very fortunate to be working at the ACLU during the day, and then I would go to school in the evenings. And it was such a fantastic introduction to this work, both on the practice side and the theory side, to be able to be academically supported in my entry to the fundraising world throughout that introduction, and really kind of be able to use the curriculum to prompt a point of view in me on fund development, to kind of make sense of the various steps and methodologies that we use as practitioners to develop funds and build fundraising enterprises. And so it was a really fantastic opportunity to kind of get me started. And then one of the final courses that I took in that master's program was a consulting class.
Oh, interesting.
And we kind of took on a client in a pro bono capacity, and a bunch of students just trying to help this client solve its fundraising challenges. And my professor at the time was like, you should check out this company, CCS. This is the kind of stuff that they do. You seem to really enjoy it. Why don't you give them a call and see if they might have something for you? And sure enough, I did. I walked in through the front door with an application, and here I am all these years later. So I'm just really grateful that this journey of curiosity and just being interested and wanting to know more and make sense of how philanthropy works has led me to a career that is incredibly meaningful, and kind of gets me out of bed with a lot of energy and enthusiasm in the morning.
Absolutely. And you can't manufacture that. That just has to come, the natural curiosity, the drive to make a difference. So thank you for sharing that background. I'm curious, Aashika, because you mentioned there was, quite a solidified sense that the programmatic side wasn't for you. Did you have a similar sense, early on that, this side of the nonprofit world, the fundraising side, the fund development side, was the right path for you?
I think so, because what appealed to me about fundraising initially was this idea that there were people who advocated on behalf of what the world could look like with
Yeah.
investment, whether it's in education, human services, you know, healthcare. I'm on the board at the Children's Museum, and even at the Children's Museum, right? That we are advocating for
Yeah.
play. And you would think to yourselves, like, why would someone need to advocate for play? But we overlook in such a busy, fast-paced society the value of certain things. And it was just interesting to me that there were a group of people whose sole job it is to build the visibility of challenges in our community, opportunities in our community, and have the responsibility of inviting everyday people to try and be part of making a difference, making change, and doing it in small ways, right? When you think about kind of annual fund giving and smaller gifts that are compounded to make an impact, and then larger investment opportunities and everything that comes with that. And then you layer on, this notion of relationships, this idea that at the heart of it, people are giving to people,
Yes.
responsibility to appeal to one another and to take seriously an investment of time that one person makes in another, and some philosophical elements that are at play there. And so
Yeah.
that's really what drew me in. And I think that's what, sort of took me away from program work, because I think in program work, you're also doing advocacy, but it's a little bit more boots on the ground. It's a little bit more focused on the actual impact of mission and where the work is happening. I saw myself as wanting to be involved in making the work happen, right? Providing the dollars to be able to do that. And I heard something early in my career, which really has stuck with me all these years, that you can, have the greatest cures for cancer that are underway and being developed. And you can have all of these theories about ways of solving poverty and
Yeah.
people who are looking for housing for people who are unhoused. But without money, without the resources to actually act on those ideas or on those theories, you make no progress. And so it really is a fundamental piece of the equation. And it's a gift. And I really think like a sacred responsibility to have to try and develop that fund, if you will, to make these incredible ideas possible.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, and totally agreed. I also had very little inkling, in college of what fundraising was, and certainly how to get into it. And the longer I've been in the field, almost 25 years, it just feels like, whether for me, prospect development, or for gift officers, stewardship, the opportunity to help realize the
Yeah.
objectives so the programs can launch, and to do that with funds is just so critically important.
And it takes every person, right? Like you pointed
Yeah.
out, prospect research, which is just like one arm of the work that we do.
Yeah.
It's such an important arm, right? And the steadiness of a prospect researcher, being able to show up for the same workflow day in and day out,
Yeah.
right? Working a process, and the benefits of that process being the result of habit, right? And doing
Yeah.
things a systematic way and in a thoughtful way on a regular basis. It may seem small, but it's extraordinary. And so I really have a deep appreciation for the work that you do. And really, as I think about the work that I do on kind of the strategy side, the execution of
Yeah.
some of the stuff that you develop, it's integral. We wouldn't be able to do it without folks like you. So we all work together in this space.
Yes, well said. And thank you for championing prospect development.
Of course.
Aashika, I'd love to pivot from the CCS slate of our conversation and expand it to talk about, the person, because it's people in fundraising. So thank you for talking about your career journey and your tenure at CCS. I always do a little bit of research because that's what I do for a living, and came
I'm
across.
holding my breath.
You got the questions ahead of time. But you mentioned you grew up in Florida, and how you were part of the Hindu community there, and how just integral that was to your sense of who you are. There, in one of the bios I found online about you, it mentioned that you have a real passion for scuba diving. You're an avid scuba diver, and particularly the Pacific coastline. I'm not at all a scuba diver, so I would love to, if you can talk about, is there a specific spot that you have yet to see as an avid scuba diver? Maybe like a bucket list place, or a place that just has been extraordinary for you to visit with this pursuit.
Yeah, I'm happy to actually, I know it's one question, but I'm happy to answer both parts of it. Like, where
Yeah,
have I not been, diving, and where have I loved diving? And, I fell into scuba diving, of course, as a hobby. It still is a hobby, but I was able to interact greatly with it because of my work at CCS. I'm a consultant, and so I'm constantly driving up and down the coastline to see our
yeah,
clients, to meet with different nonprofits. And it just provided an opportunity early in my career to explore Southern California in a different way. So
sure.
um, I was certainly, just sort of doing a little bit more ad hoc diving when I was newer to this work. It gets a little harder to do things unplanned,
Yeah.
the older you get, unfortunately. But I really love Anacapa Island, which is
Hmm.
just off the coast of Ventura, about an hour 15. A bunch of really great spots off of Anacapa, and really incredible ocean life out there that you
Hmm.
just don't see closer to the shoreline. So it's had the great benefit of just being able to do a couple of day trips out to Anacapa and spend time in the water out there. The part of the ocean that is still a little intimidating for me, I still admire and yet have yet to engage with in the ways that I would want to, are cave diving and cavern diving.
Oh,
you
interesting.
know we're starting to learn more and more about the ocean floor, like around the globe, and planet's 60% ocean. And so there's more to learn about the ocean than there is to learn about land. And there
Yeah.
are you know cliffs, there are valleys or caverns and canyons below the
Totally.
ocean that in some cases are like 100 miles deep. I think that's like the deepest in some parts. But right off of the coast of La Jolla, where the Scripps Canyon is the dive site, there's like a 1 mile submarine canyon that I've not, been diving in before, but I've heard great things about from others. And I think it's healthy to always have a little bit of fear. And there's something
Sure.
about, seeing underwater topography makes me a little nervous. Like, I kind of feel a
Sure.
little disoriented. I'm like, what's up? What's down? What's
Right.
below? I can't really fall, but I can float. So,
Right.
um,
Yeah.
still, getting comfortable with that. I think the closest thing that I've ever done to something that would be like Scripps Canyon, or thinking about, a deep water dive that is um, mountainous,
Yeah.
cave like, is the Ledge out in Monterey.
Oh, okay.
Really interesting dive site. Uh, One of the reasons I love diving is because you can't really hear anything. Sound doesn't travel too well underwater. You can't talk. So it's a
Yeah.
very contemplative, kind of meditative experience. And
Hmm.
the ledge, it's like the local ledge right off of Monterey Bay, is a spot where divers can go out, maybe 100 yards off of the coast, not too far out,
Oh.
where there's just a straight drop, like straight
Well,
drop. A couple 100 feet deep, and you can kind of just sit there on the ledge
hmm.
underwater and just look down into the
Goodness.
darkness,
Wow.
and just take a moment to reflect on, the tiny little space on the planet that we all take up.
Yeah.
So definitely one of my more memorable dives. Even though I haven't seen a ton of things looking off the ledge, it's just a really surreal experience.
That's beautiful. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think you touched on something about, it's important to have a little bit of fear in life too, as a motivator.
Of
And
course.
yeah, I think that's a great insight. Yeah, for me, I like, we live very close to mountains here in Utah, and so it is like, do I really want to take that trail? Are there black bears in the area, that I'm not aware
Yeah.
of? Um, and my wife and I have 4 kids, and so like I'm trying to, for my own benefit and for theirs as well, to put myself in kind of comfortably unfamiliar circumstances, so that I can, marginally, incrementally get over certain fears too. So I think I loved how you wove that into your scuba diving.
Oh, thanks, Tim. I think I weave that into like the entire context of my life.
Yeah.
What is the journey of life if we are not encountering things we don't know, and parts of ourselves we've not explored? I think, like, even as we think about careers, as this podcast is people in fundraising, right? The elements of who we are as people and how that shows up in our work and who we become as professionals. Like, you can set a plan, you can decide who you want to be, and then time passes and life happens, right?
Yeah.
Often off plan. And you kind of wake up and you are the person that you are. And I think one of the interesting reflections that I have about life is I actually thought when I was younger that I would grow up to be like increasingly fearless,
Okay.
right? And you sort of believe that that's going to be the trajectory of your life. But
Yeah.
I found just in diving alone that spending more time in the ocean just uncovers different fears that I didn't know that I had. And so it's a revelation, if you will. And even in work, right? Like when you think about the work that we do, it's oftentimes very high stakes in fundraising. There's a limited number of viable opportunities in a given scenario
Yeah.
to secure the goal amount that you're looking to secure. And
Mhm.
every single one of them matters. And if you aren't operating with a degree of sensitivity around your fears, where exactly are those fears? Can you identify them so that you can
Yeah.
work around them and work through them? I really do believe you're working at a disadvantage. And so that really does overlay kind of into my work, thinking about how are we pushing ourselves past what we think we know
Yeah.
into places where we don't really know, but we're willing to confront the fear of that reality and push through it.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think that has elements of, certainly drive and curiosity and a level of getting uncomfortable, but knowing that it's in the service of advancing the mission, advancing
Right.
what you're assigned to do. Because yeah, and I had a conversation yesterday at work, where our campaign manager said, I think that some of our gift officers are um, they're disqualifying prospects without the prospect actually disqualifying themselves. And they've made up a narrative. Maybe it's fear-based, like they're afraid to ask for a larger gift, or would you serve on a certain college board? And so they sometimes they construct an answer that actually isn't grounded in reality because they're afraid to have a deeper conversation with the prospect, if that makes sense.
100%. I think the
Yeah.
hardest part of our job sometimes is resisting the urge to make decisions on behalf of other people.
Yes.
Right. But instead, just having the courage to, feel secure and confident about the opportunity that we're putting forth and
Yeah.
really allowing someone the space, the grace to reflect on that opportunity and to make a decision for themselves. I see that, in fundraising as the extent of our responsibility, like advocacy, and putting the opportunities out there. We absolutely have to be able to relinquish control of the outcomes if we're going to have like long, meaningful careers in this work.
Right.
Um, and even, in the work that we do at CCS in our methodology, it's built around activity, which is really the only metric that you can control in major gifts fundraising. Can't really control anything else. The cards are going to fall how they fall.
Yeah.
You have to be able to think scientifically about like how much activity can you generate? Can you generate it in the right places? And by activity, I mean like conversations, interest.
Yeah.
Can you do that in the right places with the right people, with the right messaging, the right volunteer leadership? Can you
Yeah.
get those pieces right, the pieces you can control so you can better predict the outcomes and where you're going to land?
Yeah. Yeah. So true. And that is sort of the art and the science of it. Is the timing right? Do we have the right
Right.
people in the right place? The
Good
right.
point.
Yeah. 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 That's a lot to chew on. Thank you. You had mentioned, Aashika, earlier about sort of some elements of your philosophy. And you were an academic um, interest in philosophy as well. I'm just curious, given the breadth of clients that you have interacted with, whether that's individuals or the mission of these clients over your tenure at CCS, how does the exposure to new viewpoints and maybe some cultural practices um, add to adjust sort of how you view the world, please?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say that as a person, my area of passion and interest, just as a human being, is philosophy. It's my area of study in college, back in the day when you could choose anything you wanted to do and be anyone you wanted to be. So here I was thinking that was going to be my life calling. And in some ways it is, philosophy and
Sure.
the study of it academically, I think has taught me how to think. Um, and I've, in my experience, read and contemplated this sort of usual suspects, Socrates, Aurelius, Descartes, the greats of like Western philosophy. I think I've lived and practiced so many elements of Eastern philosophy just by way of my upbringing and my spiritual background, my religious background,
Yeah.
which for me is really the birthplace of the theory of knowledge, right? In my
Mm,
contextual understanding of the world, like that Eastern philosophy is the lens with which I view the world.
mm.
And, philosophy is this lifelong commitment to learning. And right now I'm you know, obsessed over novelty theory and this notion that explores how little we actually know about time from a physics perspective,
Wow.
and how we really don't understand the concept of time and its passing. We've kind of all agreed on some general principles, some general understandings, but the whole premise of novelty is that in order for something to be true, it has to be true in every circumstance, and then certain things about time and our understanding of it that we can't logically equate out.
Mm,
And I think this really overlaps, not so much sector to sector in my work, but really in the tactical execution of my work.
mm.
Because it is possible for logical thinking to lead to false conclusions. And I
Yes.
meet a lot of organizations that have a perception of limitation because they have organized around a false conclusion and they just don't even know. Like,
Yes.
and it's okay, it's normal to not know, right? Like you're
Yeah.
inside an organization working in-house, you haven't really seen anything else in a while, haven't been able to compare it to anything else in a while. And so I always have such deep admiration for leaders, for institutional leaders, for volunteer leaders who are willing to say, well, maybe we're thinking about this in a limiting capacity. Maybe there's a different way to think about our growth and our capacity building. Let's go back. Let's challenge the assumptions of our logical thinking and see if there's something here that can be tweaked, something here that can be reconsidered in order to actualize these greater outcomes. And, just a philosophical appreciation for who people are and how they show up for themselves, for life, for the work that they do, helps you understand the thinking with which they've organized around a function, a process, a problem. Also helps you understand how a culture of philanthropy is taking shape at their organization or exists at their organization. And then we start to do the work of working with one another, people to people, right? Professional to professional, to say, how can we challenge our ways of thinking about certain things for greater outcomes? And so I
Mm.
really do see like a philosophical perspective on this work at play at all times. It's kind of how I
Yeah.
show up for this work in general. I try to listen out for the misalignment between fundraising theory and fundraising practice among the people
Okay.
that I work with, because
Mm.
that's often, like I've mentioned before, where opportunity to reconsider approaches is really born. And we do have to be willing to kind of challenge, what we think we know in the pursuit of evolution and progress.
Yeah. Wow, that is a deep response, and I really enjoy that. It makes me think that, the benefit of a person like you talking to a client is you're able to challenge the theory versus the practice in a way that someone in-house is not able to. You know,
Yeah.
you can see disconnects in methodologies and practices in a way that, you know, if you're ingrained in the institution, well, this is how I always screen a prospect. I can't think of any other way to do it. And this is my process of, pushing that prospect out to a gift officer. So I think we just get, as humans, get just ingrained in a certain routine, a process. And so for someone like you to come in and say, well, have you considered this? I think that's just such a great benefit to the consulting, from a consultant's perspective, to be like, I see what you're doing, but can I challenge you to think that there may be other ways to do it?
Yeah. And I think it's also why you really have to respect the consultant you're working with. There has to
Yeah.
be like a fit there.
Yes.
I meet so many organizations and leaders at organizations that know that they need help, but they're not really sure like what that help is exactly.
Yeah.
They're looking to meet someone that they have confidence in, someone that they trust to say, I can help you uncover and articulate like where it is you are feeling like you need more information or you need more context.
Yeah.
But fit is so important. And
Yeah.
just in my own assessment of the consulting landscape, I've established this belief that like the difference between a good consultant and a great consultant is the ability to package the solution or architect the solution in such a way that the person, the client that you're working with, is willing to receive that solution and implement it, right? And that's the difference. Like a good consultant can build you something, they can answer your questions for you, they can deliver on the scope. But a great consultant will not only deliver on the scope, they'll do it in such a way that it's tailored to who you are as a person and a professional, so that you can actually move on it, implement it, act on it, and start to put it into action and see those results.
Yeah, well said. That was fantastic.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Tim.
Yeah, thank you. I want to be respectful of your time. We have one question here left. You mentioned, Aashika, earlier that you are a practicing Hindu, and I'm a person of faith myself, and I'm sort of curious about how others make sense of the world from a spiritual or
Sure.
religious lens. And so, in doing a little bit of research again, last fall you posted on LinkedIn about Diwali, the Hindu New Year, and you wrote, as I'm quoting, if that's okay, I loved the message here. In my culture, this is a time for new beginnings and another chance to look at the world with fresh eyes. I extend my best wishes to my fellow Hindus and all my friends for a prosperous, generous, and loving new year, where we prioritize kindness and compassion above all else. And I think from a personal perspective, like extending that generosity to people in your circle, and then for all your friends, and then to think about, where we are as a society in need of kindness and compassion. I just was really struck with gratitude for that message. So thank you for sharing that.
No, thanks, Tim, for even checking that out and for, bubbling that back up for me. It's a good reminder, to me first and to everyone else next. But, New Year's always provide an opportunity to reflect on who are we now and who do we want to be, and what is the disconnect between those two things? And what
Yeah,
are we doing to get into greater alignment with the person that we want to be?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you. And so Diwali is coming up at the end of October, so October
it is.
31st to November 1st. Your interview will air the prior Monday, on
Okay.
Monday, October 21st. I'm just curious, how do you typically celebrate Diwali? Are there certain things you're looking forward to with this particular holiday coming up in a few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly have family traditions, which I look forward to each year. It's also tradition to go to our mandirs, which are Hindu places of worship,
Hmm.
to go experience, the act of spirituality in community with others and kind of a moment of celebration. So I look forward to that every year as well.
Hmm.
But the more Diwalis that pass in my life, the more I realize that the desire for a refresh or a restart is more or less the same, right? More forgiveness, greater resilience, greater patience,
Yes,
less speaking, more listening, all the things that, all the ways that we often fall short just by virtue of being human.
sure.
And, the way that we get into greater alignment with our greatest purpose, and the way that we become better stewards of society and better caretakers of community is by starting with ourselves and checking in with who we are. Again, who are we now, and like who do we want to show up as? And so as I think about, Diwali in the near future here, and I think about, this podcast and when it will be shared, I really do feel like the top of mind contemplations for me are, how can I as a better human being be of greater service to those I work with in my professional life, and those I seek to love in my personal life.
Yes, that's beautifully said. Thank you. That's very, that's And it's just touching and it's generous. So thank you for sharing that, Aashika.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for just the opportunity to even reflect on some of these things with you. And I said this earlier on in our conversation, or I've said this to you in our previous conversations of you can't really separate who you are as a person from who you are as a professional. They are one and the same. And
Yeah.
the more people get to know you as a professional, the more they will get to know you as a person. And so you can kind of run from it earlier in your career, but eventually, with the rise of leadership in your professional career, in my professional career, there's a responsibility to get into greater alignment, with the person that you want to be and with the impact that you want to make. It's constant life work. And I'm just really grateful to work in a space, right, in philanthropy that prompts these moments for me, even if I wasn't looking for them. The philanthropic space is a space of community and connection. And so it's going to bring on these reflections regularly. And so I'm always grateful to my peer community at CCS, an incredible, incredible group of people who really want to invest in one another and help one another grow by being safe places for sounding boards of where is our leadership now and where do we want it to be, and a willingness among this group of people to be thinking about how we're evolving in those different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great concluding message, Ashika. And I think I keep hearing, some very important integral words, community and gratitude and, the intersection of who you are as a person and who you are as a professional. And, I imagine on behalf of your CCS colleagues, like the ability for you to bring that to your role and to the team is very important. So,
Thank you, Tim.
yeah, I've just really enjoyed this rich and insightful and reflective conversation, Ashika. I wish you a wonderful Diwali in a few weeks, and thank you for your time today.
I so appreciate you, Tim. I appreciate this conversation, and I look forward to the next one. Thanks again.
Absolutely. Thank you. For our audience, you can find Ashika's conversation on LinkedIn, Spotify, and YouTube on Monday, October 21st. Have a great rest of your day, Ashika, and thank you for your time.
Take care, Tim. Thank
Thank
you.
you.